Well, it took 150 goes, but Science has finally put it on pole. Welcome to episode 209 of Grid Talk, and today we are here to discuss qualifying for the British Grand Prix. My name is Tom Downey, and joining me we have Jawad.
Hello.
And we also have Olivia Kairu.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hello, and finally we have Warren.
Good to be back.
Thank you, sir. But just before we begin, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you would take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you do, you'll automatically go into our monthly draw to win a Grid Talk t-shirt from our champion range of merch. Also, if you're one of the 72 people who aren't yet subscribed to the channel, please help us out. And please consider helping us out with a like and a subscribe. So, qualifying Silverstone. As the only British person on this call, I'd like to welcome you to our to a typical British summer where it rained. So yeah, I mean, there's only one place to start really. Carlos Sainz, he's finally done it. He has finally put his car on pole. He had quite a good day out, didn't he, Jawad?
Yeah, and it even caught himself by surprise from what I heard in the aftermath on the team radio. So good on him. Good way to celebrate his 150th Grand Prix as well. Whether he can keep P1 for the race is a different story because he's, of course, chasing that first Grand Prix win as well. But a great way to do it, let's say, to be able to put it on pole. I think given the conditions as well, your favourite British summer conditions, as we all like to talk about everywhere in the world. If it wasn't for the rain, Ferrari would have had no chance of being in contention for pole position. So very much equalised by the wet conditions, the battle there between Ferrari and Red Bull. But let's just take 24 hours to, revel in the fact that Carlos has got his first pole position. And then when the race comes, I'm sure it'll be a different story.
No, absolutely. And just moving on down the grid a bit, Olivia, Max Verstappen starts P2 tomorrow. Looked like he was going to get pole position. He came top in Q1 and Q2. But sadly, his final run, he just couldn't quite get it together in the conditions needed. And ultimately starts behind his old teammate.
It was in the last moments that he lost P1. I agree with Jawad in that with the conditions that we've had in this qualifying session, it was undoubtable that it would have been in Verstappen's hands. But we do have to be happy for Sainz. It's his first pole. But it's sad for Verstappen. But I guess it's not much that he's lost in, and I think he can hold on to having hopefully a good race in tomorrow's race.
No, absolutely, and I do agree with you. It was in Verstappen's hands. We saw how close he was, constantly putting in fast laps, but then that last lap just wasn't quite there. But Warren, starting P3 tomorrow, we have the other Ferrari driver, and I think for the first time this season, the Ferrari driver who starts behind the other one, Charles Leclerc. Just wasn't quite his day today, was it?
No, it wasn't. He had the spin in Sector 1, I think, in one of his last laps towards the end of Q3. It also didn't seem like the TV directing crew was showing him a lot. If you want to talk about, we could talk about the end when they just didn't show anybody finishing after Verstappen finished. But for Leclerc, it didn't seem like you saw a lot of him out there. He just, like Jawad said, Ferrari, if it was in the dry, they weren't even going to really probably have a chance to get on pole. So I would say P3 for Charles. 2 or 3 was probably where he was going to be at in the dry going in the wet. That's fine. I don't think he ever wants to be out qualified by Sainz, especially the first time there. But it didn't seem like he had it. He even said in his post race, the lap I put didn't deserve pole. So that's I would say he would probably be satisfied with third if he said the lap's not good enough for pole. So that's what it was for him today.
No, absolutely, and that's actually that's a very good point you picked up on the TV direction, because I did notice myself when I was watching it that we were still waiting for other drivers to cross the line. We were waiting for Perez and Alonso to cross the line, and it still came up with a banner saying that Sainz had pole position, and they were showing us the Ferrari garage, which I thought was a bit odd. But F1 is no stranger to TV direction issues.
They didn't even show Russell and Hamilton's times on the screen. Like they didn't even show that. And I was like, we still have people out here. Like they were hyping it up, like how great this qualifying. Everyone's going to be finishing last one to finish. Look how great this is going to be, which I think everybody loves when Q3 is like that. But they didn't even show the times. They just went to Carlos showing his face in there. I was like, yelling at the TV. What are we doing here? What's going on?
Yeah, the direction left a little bit to be desired, I think we shall say, this afternoon. But starting P4 tomorrow, back to you, Jawad, we have Max's teammate Sergio Perez. Now, Perez obviously not sort of traditionally known for his strong qualifying. He's more of a Mr. Sunday man. But he seemed to do pretty well in the conditions. How do you think he's going to fare tomorrow?
Well, it's definitely good for Red Bull to have him up there in fourth. I think he seemed a bit, well, from what I gather, he seemed a bit disappointed with the deficit, especially. He was 0.6 off the pole time, and the talk of, the limited running that they've had in practice, in dry practice all weekend. He did end FP3 second quickest, 0.4 off his teammates. So, definitely in the mix when it comes to the race. And I think that's what Red Bull want, having both their drivers there in the top four. So strategically, they have options against Ferrari. So, yeah, the chance is definitely there for a podium for Perez. And, like you say, he's a lot better when it comes to race day and Sunday. So I definitely put him in. I mean, it's still early in the show and I'm talking podium predictions here, but I reckon Checo would be one that I would be putting on the podium at this stage with the way he's been going.
No, absolutely. He's, I again agree with you. I think if anybody's going to sort of work their way up a bit tomorrow out of the top drivers, it's likely going to be him. But starting behind Sergio Perez and starting on the third row of his home Grand Prix is the home hero himself, Mr. Lewis Hamilton, or I should say Sir Lewis Hamilton. Olivia, pretty good day, I'd say, for Hamilton. He and Mercedes may be a little disappointed that they weren't higher up. Do you think fifth is the best they could do, or do you feel that there's perhaps a bit more to give?
I think it's good to say that fifth is what is expected for Lewis with Mercedes this weekend, especially given the upgrades that they brought in for the weekend. They seem a bit more competitive. Hopefully it will show more tomorrow. Obviously the conditions again weren't ideal to show what exactly is in store for the car and what the car can do now with the new upgrades. But P5 seems like a good starting point for Lewis, given everyone that's ahead of him tomorrow. I will say though that it seems quite solid for me, I think.
Yeah, no, he's definitely in a good position tomorrow, I'd say, to get a good haul of points. And Warren, just starting behind Hamilton is his fellow British counterpart Lando Norris, who's put his McLaren a rather impressive P6 again in the wets. Lando had a pretty good day, didn't he? You'd say, given the relative performance of that McLaren.
I would agree with that. I thought it would be a pretty good day for him getting six. Obviously, anytime you can break up all the top six in there and get in there, I think that's a good day for him, especially in front of the home crowd to get six. I would have to say a solid day. The one thing I am curious about, though, is if they knew the whole British summer and it rains and everything, I wonder if teams would have gone out more in P1 if they knew quali today would have had the chance for rain, or if it was going to be like these conditions, because nobody was doing any laps yesterday. And I was surprised they didn't want any data in there if they thought it could potentially happen. So I know that's a little different than Lando, but I'm surprised that they weren't running more yesterday, potentially, to see this coming into head to get the data going. I think Lewis did the most laps, but now going back to the original thing, I thought all in all is a good day for Lando up there in 6th.
Yeah, definitely, especially compared to his teammate, who we'll get on to a bit later on. Nothing like sticking the knife in, eh? P7 is who was it? It was indeed Fernando Alonso. Sorry, my computer had a real moment then, as did I. Yes, Alonso P7. Jawad, it looked like at one point Alonso was on course for pole, or certainly on course for certainly for perhaps a front row or second row start. Ultimately, he's on the 4th row. I would still say that's a fairly good result for Alpine, who looked like they were perhaps struggling a bit in the wet today. How do you think he's going to fare?
Yeah, for the race, they definitely would be on for kind of a top 6, top 7 finish. They'd be happy to bank some points. But I love how in qualifying all year, it's been a case of hero or zero for Alonso. We talk about what could have been. Think about back to Australia, where we mentioned that he could have been on pole position, but then ended up crashing. Pulled it off their last time out in Canada and ended up on the front row. So, there was that similar sort of hype with him in Q3 this time. Could he end up on the front row again or on pole position, as it were, in similar conditions? But he had a good giggle about it as well in the pen afterwards and said, it would have been nice, wouldn't it? But I think 7th is great. He's in a competitive little bunch there. He's some quickie cars behind, which we'll get to, I'm sure. And Lando Norris ahead, thinking that, he's going to be in a good battle with Alonso through the race. So that'll be one to watch, definitely, with those two. So I think he's in a good position to get some good points.
No, definitely. Yeah, he's again, Alonso, maybe he'll overtake Norris and perhaps trying to way up the grid, provided he doesn't get caught up by the light sequence this weekend, like he did out in Canada a few weeks ago. But Olivia, P8 is Hamilton's teammate, George Russell. Possibly a little bit disappointing for him, given the team's apparent apparent performance improvements this weekend, and given he's arguably had the measure of his teammate this season, it seemed like he was fairly comprehensively beaten today in qualifying. We've seen how good Russell can be in the wets. We only have to look at Belgium last year. So, how do you think he's going to fare tomorrow? Do you think he's going to work his way up the grid, or?
I'm not really optimistic for him working his way up the grid. He has been out-qualified since Canada, the last race, Canada, and now again this time. It is disappointing that he hasn't done as well as his teammate with the upgrades. It's quite a similar result as last weekend, 5 and 8 for Mercedes. But given that they seem to have worked on reducing the porpoising issues, it should work well for George, and hopefully he gets in front of the people ahead of him and does well to maximize the result for the team. But I do not see him doing as well or getting ahead of his teammate this time. But it should be a good race for both of them as they're at home, and the team's at home as well. So hopefully they both have a good race, but I don't see much, or I'm not too optimistic about George this weekend, sadly.
Yeah. I'm sure we'd all agree. It'd be nice to see him perhaps work his way up the grid a bit, but given some of the names in front of him,
I think it's the end of the P5 and up for George this week. I do.
Olivia's already getting into her bold predictions, everybody. We're only 15 minutes in, and here it goes. Oh no, but it's I am a bit inclined to agree with you. I think he might be perhaps riding his luck a bit. But we will see what we have in 24 hours' time. But moving on down the grid, Warren P9, Zhou Guanyu Zhou. I can never remember which way around it is to be said. Again, I'm more and more impressed with him as this season goes on. You know, he's outqualified Bottas again, and Bottas is not an insignificant name in Formula One. But again, he's into P3. Had a very, very solid qualifying. What did you think of him today?
I thought he was fantastic. Like you said, I think this is third time in a row he's outqualified Bottas, 3 in a row, 2 in the wet. And I know the wet brings everybody a more level playing field, but to get to Q3 in the wet twice back-to-back races, I think that is very impressive. And same thing with you. If he doesn't have all those engine issues, he's probably got more than 2 points finishes this season. He's been really impressive lately, finding his groove too. Like, he's only on a 1-year deal. That's the thing too. His contract's up at the end of the year, so he doesn't have any security going in for next year. So he's got to prove his point every single race. But again, I was highly impressed with him this week, and I have been. I think everybody has been impressed with him the last 3 weeks he's been out there. He's been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point you made about his reliability as well, because there have been a few occasions this season where he seems to have been in a good point scoring opportunity, and then the team have turned around and said, you know, he's either had to come into the pits to retire or he's retired out on track. You know, Baku is one that springs to mind when he was in a points finishing position. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you there. Zhou has been quite unlucky in terms of reliability, and you know, it's definitely something we've seen across the Ferrari power cars. But rounding up the top 10, I can't quite believe I'm saying this, and as someone who has been very critical of this driver, I'm genuinely pleased to say, Jawad, in P10 in Q3 is the Williams of Nicholas Latifi.
The GOAT
himself. He has done it. Move aside, Hamilton. There's a new GOAT in town. But yes, genuinely. Now, just before we talk about Latifi, I just want to say I know I've been very critical of him in the past. However, he's had a lot of pressure on and off track, and I know the media, and perhaps you count someone like myself as the media, although I'm just a nerd who watches at home. I know I've been very critical of him. Can I just say how nice it is to see him doing really well in tough conditions? And you know, I just want to say, I don't think he's ever going to win the championship, but to see him put his car into Q3, I'm genuinely pleased to see it. So, me aside, Jawad, Latifi, Q3, where do we begin?
Well, you know, I will be the first to admit as well, after you, Tom, that I've also been quite critical of him. And on this show as well, I'll definitely own up to the fact that a few races ago, I was definitely on that level of thinking that he's going to be replaced at the British Grand Prix, getting on board with that rumor and everything, that Williams would bin him halfway through the season. But that's not happened, and justifiably so. And, you know, while sure, he might not see much more Formula One beyond the end of this year, if that's the case, it's good to see him put in a good performance every now and again. And it just, yeah, you know, goes back to show you the form that he had last year when he was able to score some points there in the middle of the season, along with his former teammate, George Russell. We know it's been well documented how much he struggled with these new cars in 2022 and, you know, just comprehensively beaten by Alex Albon. But, you know, everyone deserves a bit of slack. And when it counted, he put in a good performance. And especially for the team, it's the team's home race as well. So to have a Williams go through to Q3, qualify P10, it's going to be a big highlight. And good to see Latifi himself beaming in the post-quali interview as well. He had a smile ear to ear. So I think probably the you know, the most feel-good story to come out of qualifying this weekend. But yeah, not much to say about his race prospects potentially, but yeah, to get that result. And it was his first ever Q3 as well, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go, another box ticked for him in his career.
Yes, I believe you're correct, and I'm sure someone will tell us that if we're wrong, it's the internet. People like to point that out. So yeah, I am absolutely certain that it is his first Q3 appearance. And someone's just put in the chat. They said go Tiffy. Absolutely. Right, moving down to our Q2 exits. Pierre Gasly, Olivia, he went out in P11 today. As someone who has a bit of a man crush on Pierre Gasly, I was I was a little disappointed to see him go out. It seems like he's lost a bit of form, or if he's struggling a bit at the moment. I don't quite know, but yes, when I in Q3, was ultimately he was only about 7/100th off the pace of Latifi to get into Q3, but he was off the pace. How do you feel his Saturday went? How do you think his Sunday's going to go as well?
I feel like he went into the weekend knowing, him and the team went into the weekend knowing that Q2 getting into Q3 was going to be quite the struggle. They have said that they're struggling this weekend with how the car is set up, and they don't think that much is going to happen for them going forward. But it would be nice to see Gasly break into the points, carry some of the optimism of signing a new contract with him, which is actually quite exciting. I'm happy they retained him, but I guess there's nowhere that he could go other than AlphaTauri. But hopefully he gets into the points, maybe a P8. That's really optimistic. But yeah, it's disappointing to see him in P11. It's not. It does seem to be quite satisfactory for how the season has been going. But hopefully a points finish is what is in store for Pierre Gasly, a P8 maybe, in my opinion. But yeah, not much.
As long as it doesn't come at the expense of the GOAT himself, Latifi. I agree with you. I would like to see Gasly back in the points, and he certainly proved in the past that he has the skill to do it. Warren, P12, Valtteri Bottas. I believe, as Olivia said, it was the third time in a row that he's been out qualified, or it might have indeed been yourself who said that. I can't quite remember. Going a bit cross-eyed. Again, out in Q2. Just couldn't seem to get a lap together, or get enough of a lap together. And then by the time that he was able to sort of get out and get going in Q2, the rain had really arrived, and it was when nobody was improving towards the end. What are your thoughts on Bottas from today?
I think you said it best, that when he got it going, the rain had reappeared, and the track was too wet on the inters, and he didn't have a really chance to get it going. So I think you had the first 5 minutes of Q2 where it was everybody was doing the laps, and then after that it was like, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to do it, and he just couldn't able to get a good lap in the early on, and that was kind of it for him. I am surprised that he's been knocked out of Q2 again. He's always been known for his good qualifying, so I think that is something to, I don't know, watch going forward. What really are you saying when you say, see if Bottas can continue to get knocked out in Q? Like, he's just going for some points finishes, but he is known as a good qualifier. So this is quite surprising that he's getting knocked out in Q2. But maybe tomorrow he can get a points finish. But today I would have to say he'd be pretty disappointed early on with his performance.
No, absolutely. And it was I believe it was in Baku that he brought his run of consecutive Q3 appearances to an end. He had I'm sure he had something like 140 odd consecutive Q3 appearances. So I believe it was all of his drives for Mercedes, and then all of his initial drives for Alfa Romeo. Wrong Alpha there. I agree with you. It would be nice to see him back into the points tomorrow. I think he might have a bit of a job on his hands, unfortunately. Speaking of AlphaTauri, this is definitely why I said them and not because it was a slip of the tongue. Jawad, Yuki Tsunoda, P13, bit of a sort of almost anonymous performance. I didn't see an awful lot of him in qualifying, but that could be because we were perhaps looking at pictures of Carlos Sainz, like Warren said. Yeah, didn't see an awful lot of him. He didn't really seem to be threatening the top 10. How do you think he's going to fare tomorrow?
Well, because we're all praying for the GOAT, we're hoping not too well. But yeah, look, he's had a run, Tsunoda, of 3 non-points scoring finishes. He had the DNF last time out in Canada anyway. And I particularly don't think he's on for points tomorrow, unfortunately. Like, he did come through for 10th last year in his first British Grand Prix. But yeah, just, the AlphaTauri pace at the moment is so up and down that, it looks, often worse than it does look good. So, if anything, I think, the car's probably going to let Tsunoda down on this occasion, and probably they're not going to get near it, but I could be wrong, been proved wrong before, don't mind. And yeah, with the qualifying, he was probably one of those drivers who towards the end of Q2 got caught out by the worsening conditions. So bit unfortunate for that, but yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid, in this situation.
Nice little Bruce Almighty reference there. Yeah, no, so yeah, I do tend to agree with you. I don't think we'll see him make points tomorrow, sadly. It'd be nice to see it, but yeah, I think he's going to be stuck. I think he's going to be stuck in that sort of proverbial midfield DRS train tomorrow. Right, moving down to P14. Daniel Ricciardo, Olivia, again, not another brilliant day for the Australian. He's under pressure anyway with his seats. He's under media pressure. We know he has a contract that will allow him to take up an option for 2023. So he theoretically has his seats for next year. But the performance he's put in today, much like his performances this season and some last season, he's not doing himself any favors, I think we can safely say. What are your thoughts on the Honey Badger? How do you think he's going to do tomorrow? Give us your thoughts on his qualifying from today.
I agree with you. He's not doing himself any favors. It's a sad time. It's sad to see, really, with Ricciardo, because how much everyone knows how much of a good driver he is, the potential he has to do well throughout the grid and in races. But it's sad to see how he struggled to adapt to the McLaren, the deficit between him and Lando. So I'm not really expecting much given what's happened throughout this whole season, and with talk of him possibly losing his seat, which I'm not going to give that much weight to. But it's sad to see just the way people have given up on Daniel Ricciardo. Not really given up on, but yeah, no, I don't really expect much from his race tomorrow. Not really a points finish, maybe a P12. I don't know, but yeah, no, it really is sad to see, especially because I'm such a Daniel Ricciardo fan. But yeah, I don't know, not much for me for him.
No, it does feel a little bit like his days are perhaps a bit numbered in F1. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I like Daniel Ricciardo, as I'm sure the majority of people on the grid do. However, he's it's not quite worked out at McLaren, unfortunately for him. Yeah. But alongside him, Warren, starting P15 tomorrow, you could argue perhaps a bit disappointing given where his teammate is starting, Esteban Ocon. Only really just about made it through to Q2. Both he and Ricciardo left it quite late. to make it through. How do you see him getting on tomorrow? Do you see him putting at least some overtakes?
Yeah, I think he could. I think he could get a couple overtakes in, but I don't think a points finish is in his future at all tomorrow. I was quite surprised how low he was on the grid there today, or how poor his qualifying was. But I don't know. Maybe I assume he'll fight it out with Yuki and Daniel tomorrow. What else is he gonna? I said on the preview episode, I think Alpine's probably got the fourth fastest car on the grid. I think they might be a step up above McLaren. So you would think with that he's going to be able to do some overtakes out there. So, but I don't think he's going to get the points.
Yeah, no, I do tend to agree with you there. One thing I noticed as well of Alpine was they were very late in bringing their drivers out, especially during Q1. So perhaps that put them on the back foot a bit, where they couldn't get as many banker laps in. I don't know. I'm just speculating a bit, but I did notice that when all 18 cars were on the track in Q1, both the Alpines were still tucked up in their garage, having a cup of tea and waiting for it all to blow over. So it was, I'm not quite sure what the thinking was there, but let's see what tomorrow brings for them. And then moving down to our Q1 cameo appearances. In P16, Jawad, we have Alexander Albon. I bet we never thought we'd see the gap that we see between Latifi and Albon, especially this way around. We've seen it the other way around a few times this season, but no, it's not a particularly good outing for Albon, especially given his car had the upgrades this weekend.
No, and I think it was rather unfortunate when you look at the gap. It was like 0.08 of a second that he missed out on Q2 by, ironically, with his teammate Latifi in P15 to get through there. And like he said as well, there was that talk coming into the weekend about how Albon's got the upgrades, Latifi doesn't, and you would have thought naturally with those upgrades that Albon would have easily qualified ahead of his teammate. I think if it was a dry session, perhaps maybe those upgrades on the Williams would have come forward and we would have seen Albon a bit more competitive. But I think, given he's P16 or whatever, it's going to be difficult for him to really make a showing in the race. It would be good, however, for him if he could get up there close to the points, maybe do like a Australia strategy, go 51 laps on the hard tires and then do one lap on mediums or something and score some points. But I don't think that's quite possible around Silverstone. So they'll just have to gather as much data as they can with those new upgrades and hope that they can get some better results next time out.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think I echo what you've just said. So I think tomorrow will be a good opportunity for them to for them to see how well those upgrades are going to work in a race trim, and then they can take that data moving forward. Also, if Latifi would have had them, he'd have definitely been on pole. Just putting it out there. P17, Olivia, is Kevin Magnussen. Bit of a disappointing day for Haas. They looked like they were going to be there or thereabouts in Q3, especially to begin with. I got very excited seeing them towards the top of the timing charts, but I think that's just because the track was beginning to rubber in a bit, and then everybody started knocking times off. So, unfortunately for the Great Dane, he's out in Q1. Not a brilliant day for him. How do you think he's going to fare tomorrow?
Not great for Haas. Kevin Magnussen, not great for him. Last time out, I'm pretty sure he was up there in the qualifying, dropped back down. And I think that's where Haas seems to do well when they get to a good qualifying position. They're able to hold on to it and hopefully get a stronger result. But starting off in P17 for Kevin Magnussen is going to seem to be a situation where it seems like he's going to just have to ride the race out. And I don't see much gains for Kevin in the race tomorrow, but I wouldn't rule it out. But it's not looking too optimistic for Kevin in P17, and I don't see him going much further up ahead, but we don't know.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Haas tomorrow. It pains me to admit it, but they seem to have promised so much but delivered so little this year thus far. P18, I'll tell you what, Warren, you can have the distinct honour of doing both the Aston Martin drivers because they had such a good home qualifying. Sebastian Vettel, P18, Lance Stroll, P20. Stroll holds the record this weekend of the only driver who did not get out of who did not put a time that was in the 142s or below in Q1. So that is up. So the Canadians are obviously all the goats of the grid. Aston Martin, again, they seem to have got it wrong in the wets. There seemed to be something around their tyre pressures. They had them pumped up too much. Apparently, it's something they had in Canada as well. Not a very good day for them. How do you think they're going to do tomorrow?
Not good tomorrow. I'll say that. I don't think they're going to do any good. And this is when I brought up earlier. If you're a team like Aston Martin and you could get some wet weather running in practice, like you could have got in FP1. I'm looking at it now. They only did a combined 10 laps. Each driver did 5 laps. So why would you not try and get the setup better for potential of rain in Austria coming up? It's rain in Hungary last year. You get that going on. Like there's potential for wet weather races coming up. Why would you not use that to get the data here? That seems like not very good strategy. I know I'm just sitting here on my couch, but like if we're struggling in the wet, we have a chance to do some wet weather running. Why are we not going to get some data there? It just seems like they go 2 and 2 together. But no, terrible from Aston Martin. Lance was, of course, yelling on the radio like a petulant child at the end of the qualifying session. I feel bad for Seb. Like obviously everybody loves him. I feel bad for him. What's he supposed to do if the car's bad? He's trying out there, but it's like he can't do anything. I don't know what to say about Aston Martin other than poor performance. I need to see Lawrence on the TV screen. They're not showing Lawrence this year. I'm disappointed about that. I need to see him just getting mad all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason we're not seeing Lawrence Stroll is because he realizes that he's A, absolutely nuked the team, and B, he's probably trying to get rid of it.
Probably, but still show him. He's entertaining. He's entertaining for people. Like I want some entertainment. I want to see him patrolling the paddock, seeing what's going on with them.
Maybe we'll see him on Drive to Survive this year. Who knows?
We probably will.
Yeah, hopefully he'll reprise his role as the resident Bond villain of the F1 paddock. And then I say finally, he is P19 tomorrow. Obviously, Charlotte's P20, but Jawad P19. Quick word on Mick Schumacher. Got anything to say? Or
yeah, well, like I guess he was kind of flattered by Stroll being in P20. So yeah, not much to say about Mick. I guess, Olivia nailed it with talking about K-Mag and Haas overall. So they just don't seem to be in a good place at the moment. Those first points that we're hoping for Mick to score still seem so far away, so close yet so far away. So, we feel like that box should have been ticked pretty recently, last time out in Canada, if it wasn't for those reliability problems and, a couple of other occasions this season. So, yeah, just bring the car home, Mick. Please don't get involved in any more accidents and rack up that bill there so that Gunter gets mad. But, yeah, quickly a word on Aston Martin, if you don't mind. But how funny is it that we saw Mr. John Wick himself, Keanu Reeves, kind of in the Aston Martin garage for the first part of qualifying and just suddenly just vacates and goes over to Ferrari. So even he knows what it's like to support a winning or a much better team than Aston Martin. So, yeah, doing the British Racing Green huge disservice at the moment, those guys.
Well, those fighting words from Jawad there, but I do absolutely agree. Yeah, so that is your rundown of qualifying. We've covered all 20 drivers on the grids. It was almost a nice shake up today for the grid for tomorrow, and obviously with Carlos Sainz being on pole, perhaps it's a bit unpredictable tomorrow. But before we move on, let's get into some predictions for tomorrow. So first of all, I'm going to go to Olivia. I want you to give me your race winner, your podium, and your fastest lap.
I'm going to stick with Carlos as my race winner, which is very bold considering everything that happened last race with Max and Carlos in the last bit of the race. So I'm going to stick with Carlos because why not? With Max in P2 and Schorr, so I'm going to keep it the way it is for qualifying. Fastest lap I'll give to Max. Was that it? Just my race winner, my podium, and fastest lap. Yeah,
race winner, podium, fastest lap. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll keep it the way it is for those three, and fastest lap, give it to Max.
Okay. Interesting. What about you, Warren? What's your podium and your fastest lap for tomorrow?
I'm going to say Max is going to win. I think he's shown that he's got the fastest car out there. So I think he is going to take another win, and he's been the best driver so far this season. The podium, I'm going to say it's going to be Carlos and then Lewis. I said Lewis was going to make podium on Saturday, so I'm going to continue with that. And then fastest lap, I'm going to give it to Max.
Okay, interesting. And Jawad, what do you think your podium is going to be tomorrow?
Yeah, so it sounds pretty conservative to say, but Max will be on for the win. It'll be a Red Bull 1-2 with Checo second, and Carlos Sainz will finish third. And I think Max will blitz the fastest lap as well. He's in such a rich vein of form. I don't have any more superlatives to say about him at the moment. So that will probably make you quite happy, Tom, to hear that. So let's hope I didn't put the curse on him.
Well, I can't say it didn't make me unhappy. So yes. And then just me quickly, my podium for tomorrow. I think Max will win with the fastest lap. I think Leclerc will be second, and I think Hamilton will be third because I think Sainz will succumb to the pressure. I think he'll bottle it. I went there.
Is it supposed to rain tomorrow, or do we not know? Are we not going to know until 20 minutes before?
In typical F1 style, we'll probably know as they're coming out for the formation lap. So yeah, I'm not sure of the Silverstone weather offhand for tomorrow. I'll look it up later on.
I think it's overcast right now. It says that it's going to be just like cloudy. The sun will peak in and out a bit, but as you said.
Yeah, so that could be interesting for things like the soft tyres because then they might not be able to maintain temperature if it's not that warm tomorrow. But yes, right. Just and then moving on towards the end of the show, I just want to give everybody a quick opportunity to promo yourselves. So, Jawad, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, where can we find you, what you do?
So I host Hit the Apex podcast, which I do on my own, and basically do race reviews these days for Formula One and talk about all the latest news and offer quite a bit of opinion and that sort of thing as well. Just casual chat, once a week, once every 2 weeks, depending on if we're in a double header or not. Talk about the V8 supercars category as well here in Australia. So they're kind of my two go-tos, and then occasionally I will cross to anything else that catches my attention during the week. On Twitter, you can find it at Hit the Apex Media. Otherwise, the podcast itself is on all your good podcast platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, and the list goes on. So yeah, and there's a link tree with other links that you can find me on as well.
Lovely stuff. And Olivia, where are you from? Where can we find you?
You can find me with a bunch of my other friends. We cover F1 races after they've happened. So reviews. Sometimes we'll do a preview at the Chicane Crew on all podcasting places. And you can also find me at Twitter, Kairu Olivia. where I post some of my stories, my F1 stories, to wherever they get published and to whoever will take them.
Lovely, thank you. And Warren, where can we find you? What do you do?
We, my cousin Rachel and I, we do Paddock Pals Podcast. You could call us the Drive for Survive fans, I guess you could say. So that might get some eye rolls out there, but that's what she is. And we started watching more intently. I did after watching that a couple of years ago. But yeah, Paddock Pals are on Apple, Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. There we do previews, recaps, and then off weeks we try and come up with like a fun game to play. One of the last week we did When Will It Happen? So it's pretty much like when will Signs get his first win on the season coming up, and we try and do some fun stuff like that in the off weeks out there. But we're the Paddock Pals Podcast.
Lovely stuff. And just for myself, I'm from Everything F1. You can find us across all your social media platforms. We are at Join EF1. We also have the Everything F1 podcast, which is on all your podcasting platforms. I can never think to list them because I don't know what's out there these days. We also have our websites, which is our main source now, where we do race reviews, quality reviews. I've started a series on unpopular opinions. I put up a piece around overrated tracks, which garnered a bit of attention for one of the entries I put on there. I'd just like to direct you to our website to read that, and please don't hate me. Yes, we also that's pretty much everything for us. So just to round out the show, I'd just like to mention the Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live. Obviously, this one. We're also available on places such as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search for F1 Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and race results. Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon so that we can get better mics, lights, and better recording equipment. As I mentioned earlier in the show, if you leave us a 5-star review, you will be entered into our prize draw, and we'll also give your review a shout out. So I'd like to take this opportunity to do just that. I'm just going to pull them onto the screen because I am going cross-eyed. So some of the reviews we've had in recently, we've had Ben Domingo. He gave us a 5-star review and he said, learning about F1, give this podcast a listen. And this was posted yesterday. He said, this is my first season watching F1 and I'm still learning, which is why I love this podcast. Straight after the race, I can tune in and learn why things have happened the way they did. As a woman, I love learning about F1 from strong, empowered women. So there's certainly one there for you, Olivia. Also, we have one from Jack Copland 530, who again appears to be American. He says, great F1 analysis. Says, everyone on this podcast has a great understanding of Formula One, and they share their knowledge in an easy to understand way, which is perfect if you're new to F1. So thank you to both of those for your lovely reviews. And I just have a few more to read out as well. One here says, best F1 podcast I have heard, from Aaron Garrett. Well, first of all, Aaron, thank you ever so much for that. That's very kind of you. He writes, I have listened to a lot of F1 podcasts over the years, and this is the best I have heard. Host and panel are knowledgeable, but not pretentious, as so many out there are. Well, thank you very much, Aaron. We really appreciate those kind words. We have one from, the username is Curve5, I believe you say it. That might be a trendy internet username. I'm not very au fait with things like that, I'm afraid. So if I said that wrong, I apologize. They just said great F1 pod and left some emojis. So thank you for that. And then last but no means least, I had to read this one last, from Billy Z, another Tom Downey fan club member. He said, I am new to F1. I like listening to Tom Downey as he is entertaining and insightful. Plus, I am a big Max fan too. Billy, my friend, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. I know I don't please everyone, and I don't aim to, but thank you ever so much for those kind words. So just to round out the show, just like to say you can get your hands on some official Grid Talk merch on https f1chronicle.com/store. Also, make sure you are subscribed so you're the first to know when each new weekly episode is released. We will be back soon with plenty more F1 content. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.
Recording.
Oh, there we go. Right, so we'll do a quick post show because we've had some comments on the YouTubes. So to everybody who's still here, thank you very much for bearing with. I appreciate it. I'm not much to look at or listen to, but for those of you who stuck around, thank you ever so much. Let me just scroll up to the top. So first of all, Louis, who's a regular host and panelist, said afternoon from Silverstone. Warren, we have some fans of you in the comments. Does the name Nick Perner ring a bell?
Yes, it does. Yes. It does.
Yes, yeah. So I think we can also get the Warren Schorr fan club trending as well.
Yeah. I was going to say, did Billy get his check yet? Then you sent him to leave that review or not? Or is the check still in the mail?
No, I'm still waiting on Royal Mail to dispatch it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're on a bit of a barmy with FedEx, you see. Yes. Jared Bradley, very popular in the comments. I'm just going to bring this down again so I can see it because I'm craning my neck up. He said, huge qualifying today. The rain and its inconsistency is my MVP. I mean, I'm inclined to agree. You know, the rain really likes to spice things up and shake things up, doesn't it? Anybody want to say anything around that? Have anything to add? Yeah.
No, I was just excited when they turned on the TV and they said, "Oh, it's starting to rain." I think that gives you just a sense of a little sense of surprise, the element of surprise, or not the formality that it might be in the dry.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's they say rain is a great equalizer, and it's it's done wonders again today. So. It gave us a new pole sitter. It's given us a slightly mixed up order. I mean, not that much, but at least a bit. So yeah, I thought it was a very exciting qualifying. Just again, somewhat let down by the TV direction, like you said, Warren. Just scrolling through the comments, Jared, you've been very, very, very popular. Sainz runner-up MVP, fair enough. Verstappen, a second runner-up for his spin, fair enough. I'm seeing the signs on pole. Has that changed post quality? I haven't heard anything different, Jared. So as far as I'm aware,
I think that was my friend Nick. I was looking at the comments. He didn't watch. He was just tuning in because I said I am going on this, and then he was like, "Who's on?" So he didn't know what was going on.
Oh, right, okay.
A little sneak attack there, or whatever. Didn't know what was going on. Trying to get some engagement there in the comments, I think.
Thanks, Jawad. Yeah,
no problem.
And then Jawad, Tom Downey hosting. This will be lit. Thank you. I hope it was. I hope it was lit, as the kids say. Connor Walker. Now, this is a very interesting one. And once again, Connor, thank you for being in the comments. I know you're always going to be here. And this should be a good talking point for us. I might be the only one, but damn it, I love Joe. For all the pay driver stuff he went through, he's really causing zero drama and actually placing it well when his car doesn't destroy itself. Anybody want to take that?
Absolutely. I mean, I've not been shy to mention that he's been doing quite a solid job this year, and just he's been let down more by the car itself than him making mistakes or putting it in the wall and stuff like that. And we know it's a good Alfa Romeo car from the performances we've seen from Valtteri Bottas. So it's, honestly a surprise that he hasn't had more points. Coming into this season, me personally, I felt a bit slighted the fact that, he beat out Oscar Piastri for a drive, given that Piastri was the F2 champion last year. But, he hasn't put a foot wrong, and we can't fault him for that. So he's doing a solid job. I really hope he gets some more results come his way. And, he might be one of those drivers who, if he goes on to his second season and he's embedded in that team, he learns from what he's done this year, that he could put in some good results in the second season. So, yeah, definitely with you there, Connor, that there should be a bit more love for Guan Yu Zhou out there than it seems that he gets.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also forget lots of times that he is a paid driver. So to me, it seems like as much as he is a paid driver, his talent has earned him the seat equally as well. Just like you've mentioned, I think he deserves more credit than he gets. And today is a testament to that. So hopefully he continues to go along with strong results and to keep on growing within F1, because I do think that he has a place and could in the future do quite well.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. When I read about Joe coming into F1, I was very quick to say, "Oh, he's a pay driver." You know, I know he's in F2, and but he never really set the world to light in F2, much like Latifi. You know, I said I think he's going to be another Latifi, where he comes in, nice guy, gets along with everybody, but doesn't necessarily put the results in. But he's done very, very well in that Alfa Romeo, and he has had some reliability issues, as we've seen. You know, he's retired a few times, you know, due to his engine and the surrounding components just failing on him, which has been a Ferrari issue. There's only been one sort of incident, which I believe was in Imola with Pierre Gasly, which was a bit of a rookie error, but that is a learning curve, and B, in that I thought Gasly was as much to blame as Joe was, and it was only his second or third race or whatever of the season. So you know, so he's done very, very well this season, I think. You know, I'm inclined to agree with both Connor in the comments and all of you here. You know, he's doing really, really well with that car. Right, yeah. Jared Bradley again said, yes, great to see the young fella make Q3. We then have someone in the comments said to me, why are you guys very ill-informed? In FP3, Red Bull turned up their engine and Ferrari didn't. That's the reason for the gap. Okay. Thanks. Moving on. The same individual said Max lifted in the last lap because of Leclerc's spin, otherwise easy pole for Max. I do think Max was certainly on course to take pole. He did lift on the last lap, but Leclerc spun in sector 3 and Max lost time in sector 2. So you can't just pin it on that. Mm-hmm. But you know, Max certainly had what he needed to take pole today. Does anybody want to add anything to that, or are we happy to leave that one lie?
You hit the nail on the head there, Tom. So much for ill-informed or whatever they're saying.
yeah, and Z24, if you're still in the chat, you know, I'm not trying to have a go or anything. It's just, you know, Max did lift in the last lap, but he lost quite a lot of time in the second sector. But I do agree that he was definitely on course to take pole until that point. Jared came back then, said, very sad to see number 3, presumably Danny Rick, not performing this year. Hopefully he gets used to the car and has a better year next year. I agree. You know, assuming Hugh McLaren take up the option for next year and don't put someone like Colton Herta in the car next year, you know, I hope that if Danny is around next year, that he has a better car. Anybody want to take that one?
I don't think Colton, I've said this all along, is going to be any improvement on Ricciardo. He's still, for me, very much not like properly proven in IndyCar yet either. I could be wrong. He's probably doing something that I can't see, but yeah, until he like wins a championship or at least, you know, becomes a regular race winner, I don't see him as someone who could replace Ricciardo. And like we said earlier in the show, you know, all of us want this to work. We want to see him do well in the McLaren. And, you know, we get flashes of it here and there this year, but then he qualifies, you know, wherever he did in the nether regions, for example, today. And then it's like, great, you know, we're not going to get points again, especially when Lando is up there, you know, and is on for points again tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm with, who was it? Jared. You know, I'd love to see him improve and, you know, have a better year next year, but you know, we've still got half a season to go, and you know, we can't just wait for a new car next year to be able to hit the reset button and let's go again. We've got to try and make something happen in the current car that they have, because yeah, McLaren are not going to change their whole car concepts based on the fact that Ricciardo can't get to grips with it, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't they? Oh, go ahead, Olivia.
No, I was just going to say that I agree. I feel like to give up on Ricciardo right now and replace him with Colton, or I think Pato was up for the seat at one point. I think it's too soon. I think giving it one more go for another season would be in their best interest to kind of nurture their driver and kind of build on what they've set their sights on for the future, because I do think that with a new driver coming in, you kind of have to shift focus completely and shift so many things as well. But with Ricciardo in the team already, you have what you set and you can kind of move forward with that. But I do think there's more in store for Ricciardo next season. Even this season, I hopefully, fingers crossed. But I don't know. It would be too soon. Sorry, what were you going to say, Warren?
No, well, on our podcast, we put we don't talk about Ricciardo until he proves himself. It's the same thing over and over again. We won't get, but I will say the thing about the new car, like, weren't we saying the same thing about him last year of, hey, next year we're going to get a new car. We think he's going to be better in that. I know he won at Monza, but it seems like, then give him another. I know the car changed from last year to this year, but the next year we'll get the same car again. It seems like we're just recycling the same talking points that we had about him last year at this point right now this year. And yeah, he did get the win, but we're almost in like a hamster wheel cycle here. It's just like, I'm tired of talking about it. Just let me see it on the track. Just prove it out there. Like, there's something in the car if Lando can get sixth. Like, there's something in there. It's up to you now to get all of it out of it.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's pretty well said, Warren. And that's a very good point about last year. We were saying, it's a new car next year, all the rest of it, and here we are repeating the same cycle. So so alas, it's I don't know. We'll see. Jared, again, very active in the comments today. Thank you for that. He's given his podium. He said Max Perez signs for a podium. That would be so I did think about Perez, but I thought, is he going to really pass Leclerc? And and then have Sainz drop back. I could see it happening though. I think that's a good shout for a podium. Yeah, and then he said that's a good pick, Tom. Max Leclerc, Hamilton's a solid podium, and then he's also said, obviously when we talked about Haas, he said yes, Haas looked good early on, but I think Tom was right. That's got a ring to it, isn't it?
Print the shirt. Tom was right.
Yeah, just have a big picture. Oh no, let's not do that. Jared, I presume you're talking about when I said that Haas seemed to promise so much at the start of the season, and then they've ultimately under-delivered because they're still sitting ninth in the constructors. Does anybody want to add something to Haas aside from the better car?
Yeah, I would hope that. Well, this is more tongue in cheek, but the American team going into Britain on July 4th weekend, you'd hope for a little bit of a better showing from the Americans.
Very good. Yeah. No, it's I'm just going to echo what I said earlier. Haas just appears to have. Not been able to get it together. They showed so much promise at the start of the season in Bahrain, and they were on course for a very, very good weekend in Canada, but reliability has got in the way, which seems to be a common thread with Ferrari powered cars. And then ultimately they just don't seem to have lived up to the hype this year, unfortunately. Is it, again, we are, again, we're 9 races into the season. We've still got a long way to go. But yeah, it's not looking that much better for them than I think we were all expecting.
It also doesn't seem like they've brought a lot of upgrades. Like other teams are constantly up. Like I know they don't have the funds of other teams, but like they brought some small end plate thing this week. I don't know when the last time they brought an upgrade was before this week, but they haven't done any like major upgrades, which I would think is surprising.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually, Warren. And I know. Obviously, it seems like Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, Aston have much bigger budgets, but we're still in a cost cap era. So they're still only a finite amount they can spend. Don't forget. But again, maybe then it's not having enough money into the R&D side of things. It's not enough money into the facility, so they can't produce the parts quickly enough. I don't know, but Haas, feels like they're slipping back into their old ways a bit from last year, which is a shame. One more thing that I can see in the comments that then we'll round out because Jawad looks like he's running off fumes. Ken Waller. Now I don't want to get into this too much because this is a whole thing. This is a whole other thing. What do you think of the racist PK family? Nelson PK calling Hamilton racist slurs. I'm surprised this podcast hasn't mentioned it. So, Ken, I just like to say, I'm surprised this podcast hasn't mentioned it. This is about reviewing qualifying for the British Grand Prix. Now, and I'm not condemning it at all. What I'd like to do very quickly, and I don't want to make this a big thing. We'll start with you, Jawad, and we'll go around to the same order. If you just want to give your viewpoint or something on it, just for a minute or two, just to say what you think, how you feel, all the rest of it, because for me, I think it's important that we talk about this as F1 fans and as we racers one and all the rest of it. This is exactly what it's about. So, Jawad, the floor's yours.
Without getting too deep into it, which I could easily get caught up in talking about it for a while. I absolutely agree with the line Lewis Hamilton put out about archaic mindsets needing change. And I say that as someone who's experienced racism firsthand, from a very young age. And it's a matter that, the English language or, just language in general is very broad and, it's so beautiful at times, but it can be also very horrible, as we know. And, the fact that we're in 2022 and, some people, and this doesn't just apply to PK, so we can't just say, okay, Boomer, you are in a different era there but with what happened with Yuri Vips as well, only a week before this all came out, is that people have this mindset that it's okay to say things like that, and it's not just racial things, but I'm going to go into homophobic and just anything negative which is offensive about people's backgrounds, gender, just anything, and it's just like, no, just no, just keep it stun. Don't say anything, And the fact that Vips as well thinks it's appropriate during a live stream of whatever he was playing to come out with that. It's like, no, like they're in no context. Is that okay? And then for PK as well, and it came out again, there was another interview he did when talking about the 2016 championship or whatever, and he mentioned the same thing again. So you can't just say, oh, this was a one-off. It's happened before too. So basically what I'm saying is it's not okay. And, people do have to have a shift in their mindset. And Formula One is, for those who say sport and politics don't mix, we're in an era now where we need these platforms. We need these athletes and megastars with the status to be able to put the message out there to incite change. And for someone like Hamilton, who has been doing it on his own for so long, and yes, F1's got We Races One and everything, but like, what does it stand for when it seems the sport itself isn't getting behind their driver and actually putting in action to change things rather than just putting out a statement here and there and the odd token gesture. So, you know, he's right, Hamilton. It's not time for, you know, statements and words. It's about taking action, and we need to change our mindsets when it comes to this sort of thing. And I know that's much longer than I thought I was going to talk about it, but it's hard not to get a bit worked up about it.
No, I'm sorry. Jawad, I just want to say that was very, very well said. And I think you covered a lot of very, very good points. You made some very good points there. I just want to mention the article that you wrote, which I read earlier, which you referenced a few bits, you know, which you talked about there. Yeah, very, very well said. Olivia, do you want to add anything to that? Do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Yeah, I'll keep it short, but I agree 1000% with what Jawad just said. I think, just like he said, I'm a political science student, and for people to say that politics and sports that there's no place for politics and sports, that doesn't make sense to me. So I'll start off there. But it is hard to see, especially as a Black woman, trying to work my way into motorsport. You do kind of get disheartened when you see such comments, especially directed at someone who's well in their motorsport career, as Lewis Hamilton. You do get disheartened, and you kind of do feel the pinch, and you wonder whether it's even possible for you to get through to where you want to get through within the field. So it is scary, but I don't know. It with everything that's going on with diversity and inclusivity, it definitely needs to get to a point where action is taken and words aren't the only thing that is going on or is spoken. With F1's We Race as One, I mean, it doesn't do much to only race as one, but you also it falls on the drivers as well, and they can't be silenced by the FIA president or by F1 as an organization to kind of conform to racing as one. I mean, it puts everything into one envelope and is expected to be solved that way, which I don't agree with. And it's nice to see drivers picking and fighting for the causes that they do believe in. And it is nice to see a lot of drivers coming together in support of people who are being discriminated against, in support of women in sport, in support of the LGBTQ community, in support of even the environment with Vettel. So it's a scary time, but it's also a really good time, because you do feel the buzz of diversity and inclusivity with the Hamilton Commission and with other different organizations championing difference and broadening the world of F1. So the old guard kind of needs to step away or needs to change their mindset and accept that the world is changing and that there needs to be more difference accepted within the sport.
Again, very, very, very well said, Olivia. Warren, do you want to add anything to this? Or
no, everything's already been really said. I think we talked about this a lot on our preview pod for this week on Wednesday. But it's does F1 still do the We Race as One before the race or not? Did they stop that?
They've dropped
that
for this season.
Did for this year.
Yeah, that's another thing. So it's you want to keep doing this, but you're like, one of the things that you did the show, so you dropped off before. So that was always like a weird thing. Like, if you're going to keep, why would you not keep doing it? I know it's just kind of, I don't want to say ceremonial, but just like, this was something that you would do. And now the drivers are left to do it up on its own. That always felt, when they said that felt weird to me. But no, it was good to see all the teams and the drivers come out to support Lewis, and I think F1 banning him from the paddock, I would say that's probably a pretty reasonable recourse to do. But no, I don't really have anything more to add on that.
Yeah. And me myself, I'm not going to. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to add anything. Jawad and Olivia, you both covered everything in more than enough detail, more than enough depth. And yes, Ken, if you're wondering why this podcast hasn't mentioned it, well, there you go. We've mentioned it. But yes, right. Appreciate that. Got to a bit of a serious end of the podcast, but it's a topic that I felt we couldn't exactly ignore. So yes, thank you for everyone who has stuck around. And yes, we will see you tomorrow after the British Grand Prix. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.